All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are about 1 week before the absolutely huge MLB 2022 trade deadline. We are expecting the superstar Juan Soto to get traded. I've got some major headlines to look at, react to, and then we've got a few different trades I've taken off of the trade board, and we'll look at those involving Soto and others. But Ken Rosenthal, says the Angels are reluctant to move Shohei Ohtani. The Padres are the new team reportedly interested in Juan Soto. Now, how realistic is that? Can the Padres make it work? We'll talk about it. But guys, when it comes to Ohtani, the overall sentiment is the Angels, they're not ready to pull the trigger. It's a situation where Ohtani means so much to them in terms of marketability, they'd rather just hold on to him. I've said for a few days now, from a baseball sense, it makes sense for the Angels to trade Ohtani based on their current contract situations with Trout, with Rendon. You're not going to be able to pay Ohtani $40 million per year. He's never going to have more trade value than he does now. But it looks like they will stand pat. And this is interesting from Ken Rosenthal in his article. The Angels would seek established major leaguers trying to fulfill their goal of returning to the postseason as quickly as possible. I feel really bad for Angels fans because their management has absolutely no clue what they are doing. They're trying to contend every year. They don't have enough pitching. It's like the problem with having Mike Trout. When you have Mike Trout on your roster, you think you're going to be a contender every year. But if you don't have the pitching, if you don't have the overall infrastructure, you could have Trout playing amazing, you could have Ohtani playing amazing, and it simply doesn't matter if you do stupid things like give Anthony Rendon $35 million a year. You're not developing any prospects at all. The Angels are just ran horrifically bad, and it is really sad. And then we've got this one executive saying about Juan Soto, I think San Diego is as likely as the other 28 teams combined. Now, that's a little bit of a ridiculous statement, but they do have the players. We know about A.J. Preller, what he's been doing, and we've got multiple reports saying the Padres and the St. Louis Cardinals reportedly entering a bidding war. I don't know how real this is to acquire Juan Soto, but Washington's preference is still to acquire the Yankees' Anthony Volpe in a potential deal. This is the first I've ever heard of this. If this is true, it's extremely significant for and extremely good news for the New York Yankees. If the Nationals have identified as wanting Anthony Volpe, that could give the Yankees a major opening as long as they're okay with taking on at least half of Patrick Corbin's terrible contract. They'd have to gut their system. Dominguez would be gone, Austin Wells, very likely Peraza, and Volpe. Although you'd like to keep at least one of those, but if you're trading for Juan Soto, you're probably going to have to give up everything. I don't know, I haven't heard any other insiders saying the Nationals have specifically targeted Volpe other than this MLB nerd. So, I guess we'll see, but you can see John Morosi, the St. Louis Cardinals, well-positioned. We talked about this days ago. I'm ahead of the media when I say, listen, the Cardinals, they've got the young players, they can do it. The media comes out a few days later and is talking up the Cardinals. I knew this was all a thing. It's because the Cardinals have the young players. Same thing with the Padres. Same thing with the Dodgers. Although we really haven't heard much of the Dodgers on Soto recently. That doesn't mean they can't still get it. They are a top contender for Soto. And there's a little bit of a straw poll. Which three teams do you view as the favorites for Juan Soto? It's the Padres. It's the Dodgers. The Cardinals, I would say those would be right around the top three. The Yankees as well. The Mariners may be a dark horse, although that Julio Rodriguez injury is a little bit concerning. The Mets, I just think there's no chance they're going to trade him in division. The Rays, we're going to get to that in a second. We're going to get to these people thinking the Rays and these small market teams might trade Juan Soto because he has 2.5 years left on his deal and then flip him in a year That makes no sense. That's not how small market teams think. I'll explain why. I don't see that happening. The Giants are also another team I could see. Blue Jays, we've talked about maybe Bo Bichette going back to the Nationals if they'd be interested. Brewers, they don't have the prospects. Cubs, no clue what that is. Rangers, I've never thought they've had the prospects. And then the Red Sox, they do have a really good young middle infield prospect, but it looks like they're selling. So we've got another, this is a really interesting one. Athletics, Sean Murphy receiving significant interest from teams, according to Ken Rosenthal. Murphy is under team control for the next 3 years. And really, the logical fits are literally any contending team. Like, legitimately. There's some sort of epidemic with how bad hitting is among catchers league-wide. Nobody has a good hitting catcher. So Sean Murphy, this is the Athletics saying, listen, Sean Murphy's never going to have as much value as he does now because in a year or in 2 years, he's going to be in arbitration. They can trade him right now completely or at least partially replenish their entire farm system. They know they're at least a year or two away from contention. That's why they're thinking about floating the idea of trading Sean Murphy. These small market teams are getting smarter. And again, we're constantly hearing me and other people in the media say he's never, this is as much value as he's ever going to have. It's the same thing with Juan Soto. That's why they're trading Juan Soto with 2.5 years left on his deal, because he's never going to have value like this. Same thing with Sean Murphy. He's got 3 years of arbitration left. That's a reason to keep him because he's cheap, but it's also a reason to trade him because his contract is so attractive, you're going to get more back for him. And he would have a ton of interest, and the Guardians, which is my team, very interesting. They need a good hitting catcher desperately. I know they value defense, but my goodness, that would be a good fit. The Rays, again, it's pretty much any of these teams. None of them have good catchers. Here is a trade with the Athletics for Sean Murphy. That would be tough. I understand. I would not want to give up a few of those prospects. Valera, the Guardians have not had an outfield prospect like that in a while. That would be a tough one. But the thing is, the Guardians have an influx of kind of a logjam of middle infield talent. So they've got so much depth in their farm system. I could theoretically see them. If I was the Guardians, I'd be like, let's trade Amed Rosario, get a nice hitting outfield prospect back for him, maybe trade Plesac, you get him some sort of mid prospect, and then try and acquire Sean Murphy while keeping, you can trade one of the good infielders. You can trade Gabriel Arias because you've got the depth overall at the position. You could even trade Tyler Freeman or Nolan Jones. So they definitely have the option to possibly trade for this cornerstone catcher. This is another trade with Tyler Freeman. I would 100% do this. I know Josh Naylor is a good player. He's having a really good season. He's just not a good defender. And guys that can only play first base or DH, I'm not interested in. I don't think the Athletics would want Josh Naylor. They probably want prospect-specific hauls. But that would be a trade to get Sean Murphy. I would do it in a second if I was the Guardians. This is a Juan Soto to the Rays trade. So you're talking about a Rosarena, Bradley, Edwards, the second base prospect. The reason I don't see so the argument for the Rays to do this is they could acquire Soto with 2.5 years left on his deal. They'd have him at the end of this year, but I don't think the Rays are going to be doing anything in the playoffs, even with Juan Soto. They've got Wander Franco, who's injured, a lot of injuries. They'd have him theoretically for next year, and then they would trade him in the last year of his contract to recoup some value back in their farm system. I just don't think that's how small market teams operate. I really don't. So, I guess I understand the idea of, you can trade Juan Soto and then trade him again in a year to replenish your farm system. But when you trade him, you're not getting the same value because he's going to have less years left. So I don't think the Rays are a contender at all for Juan Soto. I think people are throwing anything at the wall at this point. This is the Cardinals, who are definitely positioned to offer up a lot. If I was the Cardinals, I would be very motivated to try and trade Tyler O'Neill in a potential Juan Soto trade. That's who I would want to include. I don't know. This might come down to who the Nationals want. If the Nationals want Nolan Gorman, if the Nationals want Dylan Carlson, if the Nationals want Matthew Liberatore, Mason Wynn, it's who they want, because you're going to have all these teams bidding against each other. And obviously the Nationals are going to let the offers keep coming in. They're going to keep getting more significant. And this is another potential trade with O'Neill. And I think any deal with the Nationals, if the Cardinals are trading for Soto, it's going to have to involve Jordan Walker, who is one of the best young prospects, probably the best third base prospect in baseball. I've heard of a few people say he's going to profile more as an outfielder, but right now he is a third base prospect. And then you've got Mason Wynn, who just has a cannon of an arm, really good middle infielder. Matthew Libator, potential ace pitcher, top 50 prospect, I believe. And then Tyler O'Neill, who's already in the MLB. That covers the rumor we heard about what the Nationals want in return for Soto. They want 4 to 5 some combination, top prospects, young MLB players. So that is interesting. So here is the Padres, the team that has been rumored to kind of be one of the top 2 or 3 teams trading for ones. Well, actually, this doesn't include Patrick Corbin. So I don't know how realistic this would be. Jake Cronenworth, I did not realize he was worth 55 in terms of his trade value. That seems a little bit high. These seem to be approximate values. I think it's based off a WAR, how valuable these guys are ranked. But 55s, I would probably value them at like 30. I don't know about 55. But I think the trade is going to have to include Patrick Corbin. Unless, because like some of these teams just aren't going to be able to give up enough just for Juan Soto's value. If you include Corbin, take on his full contract or at least part of it, it lowers the cost because Corbin's contract is so bad. And then here's the Yankees if they want to take on Corbin. This is a Volpe. This is the Yankees trading most of their farm system. They are keeping Jason Dominguez. So how about that? The Yankees would keep Dominguez in this trade and then possibly be able to trade Dominguez in a different trade for a starting pitcher. So you would get Juan Soto and then maybe you could trade Dominguez for a starter. You go all in. The issue with the Yankees is they need a starter really bad. They need a reliever. At least you can get relievers for nothing, I guess. So that's not really an issue. They're going to get a reliever. They very desperately need a starter. And, you know, you'd love to get a more defensive-minded shortstop. If I'm the Yankees and I'm trading for Juan Soto, the other guy I would target... This is an interesting thing I thought of. I wonder if the Nationals would want Gleyber Torres. Because if I was the Yankees, I would be fine with trading Gleyber Torres under the idea that I would trade for Whit Merrifield to replace Gleyber Torres, because I think Whit Merrifield's one of the biggest bargains of the deadline wherever he goes. He can play multiple positions. For the Yankees, he could play second. He could play the outfield. He's been hitting 250, 260 the last 2 months. He just had a really bad April. So if I'm the Yankees and I'm trading for Soto, I would include Torres. I don't know if I don't think the Nationals would want Gleyber Torres, but if they would, I would trade him and then just trade for Whit Merrifield. You don't have to give up much. Merrifield is also under contract next year. And then also maybe if you can swing this deal without giving up Dominguez, you could trade Dominguez and just completely gut your farm system and acquire a starting pitcher and go all the way in. You've got the Aaron Judge contract coming up. There's a lot of issues there. So the Yankees possibly going all in, trading for Soto. And then if you keep Dominguez, you could probably trade him, not for Castillo. Castillo's going to cost more than I think the Yankees would be able to afford if they gutted their system for Soto. But you could trade for a viable starter like a Zach Plesac or someone like that. But right now, you've got the Padres, you've got the Cardinals, the Giants are still lurking. Of course, the Yankees, I'm sure, are really... The other reason, again, the Yankees are interested is because they don't want to pay Aaron Judge. Paying Aaron Judge, no matter how good he is this year, they realize giving Aaron Judge $37 million when he's 36 or 37, it's just a horrible business move. And it'd be one thing if Aaron Judge was your only bad contract. The problem is Brian Cashman already has given Garrett Cole a terrible contract where he's going to be making $35 million by the time he's 35. Giancarlo Stanton, who keeps getting injured now, is going to be making $30 million for the next 5 or 6 years at least. I think his contract is through 2039. So the Yankees have 2 bad contracts already. That's why they would much rather make their third super contract be Juan Soto, because Juan Soto is so young. And I think they're really desperate to trade for Soto if they can make it happen. I don't know if that intel on the Nationals wanting Volpe specifically, like if they're targeting him, that's a major advantage for the Yankees because they're going to be more motivated to trade with the Yankees and make it work if they've identified Volpe as the guy that they want. And I'm sure the Yankees would be more than happy to give him up and give up other prospects for a Juan Soto trade. So you've got, I would say the 4 or 5 main teams to watch: the Yankees, the Padres, the Cardinals, and the Dodgers at this point. And then you've got dark horses like the Mariners. We'll see. I mean, there's a lot of teams that can do some things. The question is, are teams willing to eat most or all of that Patrick Corbin contract? That's something we're going to have to see, and we'll have to, continue to update this situation as it evolves. But guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description.